I'm Emily Winston with Boichik Bagels.
And my name is Iso Rabins. I'm one of the founders of Forage Kitchen in Oakland and a writer for Berkeley side. So we're here today and I'm going to learn how to make some bagels with her.
My project for the last many years has been recreating the H&H bagel that was on the Upper West Side of New York City, right next to Zabar's. That was my holy bagel growing up, and when it went out of business, I was deeply upset and wanted to have my bagel to eat again. So I launched on my quest to recreate it and just started playing with bagel recipes in my kitchen. And after 5 years, they started getting really good. People started begging me to make more, that I should consider selling them. So I started taking classes with the Food Craft Institute in Oakland and decided to launch as a cottage food operation. I did that at the Eat Real Festival and it was a huge hit. I got written up, did some pop-ups. I did one where we were here and I just invited people to show up at my house, and the line was starting from the living room and went out the door, down to the street and down to the corner of the block, and I had to turn most people away because unfortunately I could only make up to 9 dozen bagels at a time because they have to chill in the refrigerator overnight, and that's as many as I could fit in there. So I decided that this is really something that people want. It's not just me, but everyone else. A lot of ex-New Yorkers and a lot of other people who have had the H&H bagel want that bagel too. So I decided to go pro with it. So I signed a lease in Rockridge, actually on the Berkeley side of Rockridge. That's the site of the original Noah's Bagels. And we're gonna be the most New York bagel shop that has ever landed in California. That's my goal. This is the flour I love to use. It's from Central Milling. It's organic. It's really great. It makes a really wonderful bagel. And of course, flour is the biggest ingredient that we've got in a bagel. It's a lot of flour. It's very high gluten flour. That's the key for bagels. That's where the chew comes from, is the high gluten. So bagels are a very low hydration dough. That's partly why they're so dense and tough, and it's a very dry, very elastic dough. This is my very precise.
It works.
No, I'm weighing it. That's a big thing. Doing things by mass makes a big difference. Baking is really precise, even at this tiny scale. Coming out of the freezer, we've got our yeast. So this is not sourdough. The traditional New York bagel, is a commercial yeast. Sourdough is great and wonderful, but it's not a New York bagel. And so what I want, a lot of people say, well, it's an East Coast, West Coast hybrid sourdough bagel, and that's well and good. But what I want is a New York bagel, and that's not sourdough. So it's not sourdough. So this is malted barley flour. There's actually a lot of similarities between baking and brewing, and I did some beer brewing a while back. So barley, you can take it and you start the malting process. So you wet it, you let it start to germinate, and then you dry it, and then you kind of toast it a little bit. And you can toast it to deeper levels. But there's all this enzyme activity in the malted barley and a distinctive flavor. So then you take that and you can make beer with it, of course, and then whiskey. And you can also use it for baking. So what's nice about this is that this is just the malted barley and then ground into flour. So it has a lot of this enzyme activity to it. And it's often used in baking, but it's usually incorporated into the flour. So it's already like when a flour is enriched, it's often already in there. It's like it'll even say like a malted flour. But the flour I'm buying does not have it. So we're adding a little in, and mainly it's for the extra enzyme activity. That's going in. Next up, we're gonna try, this is a new sugar actually. I just got a sample of, I wanna try out today. This is this fancy organic brown sugar. So the H&H bagel, there's had a particular sweet and malty profile to it. So we're also going to use malt syrup. So between the sugar and the malt syrup is how we get that flavor. It is a little sweeter and maltier than your average bagel. And that's kind of what gives it its charm and magic, I think, in a lot of ways. So that's good. I have that. Then we're gonna get our syrup action. So I've got, these are looking pretty, this is almost done, but here's our barley malt syrup. And barley malt syrup is kind of a crazy thing to work with. It's really sticky. So nice and sticky. Ooh. And the last ingredient that is pretty much always critical to baking is the salt. So this is natural sea salt. And salt, I want to add last. You don't want it to sit and like kind of hang out with the yeast because it can kill the yeast. And now we mix. Oh, and I should need to pour it in. Okay.
Is this a size batch usually?
Yeah, so this is just 18. And this is like, yeah, 18 things.
That's how much you
So, mix it up. So, now what we're gonna do is take a piece and pull a window.
Can I do one?
Yeah, got to grab.
Oh, I love this.
So we're just gonna kind of gently pull, and what we want to do, and then we want to hold it up to the light. So see, it's like ripping a little bit. It's not really holding. We want to see. We want to have like the stained glass window of dough that doesn't.
Yeah. If I'm super gentle, I can do it. But
yeah,
mine ripped over here too. Yeah. Oh, it's ripping. Yeah.
So I would say we're going to put this back in and give it another minute because we want. So this is developing the gluten. Okay. Not sure.
What's the difference between California bagels and New York bagels?
So a lot of the California bagels are steam bagels instead of water bagels. So for instance, that's what Noah's does. The dough process is similar, but you'll see when we do the baking of the bagels, it's a very different process. Instead of what we're going to do, they take all the dough and they load it into a steam rack oven and steam them and then bake them. So they're never boiled. And they're also not baked on stone. And so it really makes a big difference to the texture, like entirely. The bagel is entirely different. And when people say, when New Yorkers complain that bagels just taste like bread, that's the main thing that they're really kind of picking up on, is that the texture is wrong, and the texture feels more like bread than a water bagel, because the process gives it this very specific and iconic texture more than anything else. Do we want to take one? I feel like now, see what we've got now? Now we've got this nice, it's like staying together nicely. We're getting some sunshine through. How's your?
Oh, it was doing good, but my window was good before. It's getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Good stained glass.
Excellent. nice ball. So normally what you would do is take your giant beast of dough and you start rolling it out. You cut strips and then you roll snakes and you rip it and you're rolling and you're putting all together. The only flaw there is until you get really good at knowing how much you're pulling out every time, then your accuracy is way off. So you'll have, the weights will be all over the place. You'll have some really small ones and some large ones. But because I'm only making dough for 18 bagels and I want them to be fairly consistent, what I'm doing instead is basically just cutting off chunks of dough and weighing them because I am aiming for a roughly 110 gram bagel per bagel. So this is not done in a commercial setting. It's very tedious. And I wouldn't want to do this at scale at all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna weigh some dough. And the method and there's different ways to do this. Some people actually make a ball and then poke a hole through it, but that's not very historically kind of accurate at all. That's totally just a home baker method. So I'm making this rectangle and I want to kind of roll it up. So we're getting some tension in the skin. And now I'm going to roll out my snake to about there. And now I'm going to pull it and fold it over and seal it. And then that's it. Actually, I need to grab my cornmeal though. Forgot that. My very official cornmeal. Now we just take it and put a little cornmeal on it and put it on our proof board.
Cool.
Ta-da!
Good try?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, it's way too much. Going crazy. Too much. Surprisingly little amount of dough. I would imagine it being a lot more. Oh,
so that's another thing. So I'm making bagels on a more modest size. Bagels over time they've evolved to get bigger and bigger in most commercial stores. And that's actually been a complaint in New York that bagels have grown bigger over time. And part of it is people get excited about larger things, but historically they were like very small. What's now often sold as a mini bagel, but because it's the same amount of labor to do it either way, no matter what size, you're still this rolling, especially when bagels were all rolled by hand, you're doing for each bagel. So it was better economics to use more dough for the same amount of rolling and sell it for more money than to do all these small ones. So that's why bagels kind of morphed.
And then like that?
Yeah, so roll it, make a little snake. Okay.
Like so?
Yeah.
Go like that?
Like that. And give it a couple rolls. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
That good?
Yeah.
Drop that in there. Boom.
Yeah.
My first bagel.
Your first bagel.
Keep doing it.
Later, that's not very interesting. Sit out. All right, the bagel. All right, so these are bagel boards. So these are, I made these myself, custom size just to fit my oven. So it's wood with a piece of burlap on it, and the thing is we're gonna get them nice and wet. And these are critical for a traditional water bagel. And there's a lot of the labor involves these. All right, I'm gonna set these out over here. This bagel sink set up, and we'll get our toppings ready. So here's my everything mix.
Cool.
So my everything mix is a little different than a lot of other everything mixes. I don't like garlic. I actually don't put garlic in my everything mix. I have sesame, poppy, onion, and salt. The garlic, I feel like it burns easily,
Yeah,
and
it gets
it's
bitter.
funky, and it like perfumes the space too much. So I'm
It's
sure
true,
you
it's
have a lot
always
of unhappy
bitter.
people
Yeah.
that I'm not having like garlic or a garlic bagel, but it just doesn't quite do it for me. The other thing about my everything mix, and one of my secret weapons, is this guy, the Melvin Flake salt. I have not come across any other bagels using this. And there's something magical about Melvin Flake salt. We can open this up and take a good look. So in New York, they are generally using pretzel salt. So it's these like kind of big cube salt crystals. That's pretty much all I've ever seen in New York. But there's something about Melvin Flake salt that's just really magical, and it's expensive, but I think it's worth it. So that goes in my everything. Anyway, so here is our bucket of everything.
Okay.
I'm gonna use that. And I'm also gonna whip up a plate of salt and pepper. Very precise. And I like this stuff, this butcher grind from our local Oaktown Spice.
I love Oaktown Spice.
It's great.
It's like a magician's workshop.
Yeah, and so this stuff is nice and coarse. So it's not just, it's so big and it can just like stand up to being scattered around on top of a bagel. So I'm just gonna kind of smush this around a little. This is a very scientific process. Leave this handy, yeah. And now we have our salt and pepper topping ready. So now we've got our official bagel kettle boiling nicely. So we're just gonna throw all our bagels in.
You find they stick to each other in there, or is that not a problem?
No, it's not a problem.
Interesting.
These look a little underproof. They look like they're kind of...
So they come out as they rise? As they float?
Not yet. I usually give them about a minute. There's a lot of wiggle room on there, and it can really vary. I've seen there's shops that have gone like as low as like 5 or 10 seconds and up to 2 minutes.
5 or 10 seconds?
Yeah, which I feel like
Doesn't seem like it would do anything.
Yeah, so what we're really doing, we're doing a lot to the crust with this. Also, it's like warming the whole thing up. The yeast are getting ready to party. So there's a lot that's really happening with this boil. That steaming just doesn't quite do the same way. Let me get that. Actually, I'll put the next one.
Okay.
Alright, so we're going to do over here. These have cooled a little bit. Now they're wet. So we're just going to kind of smush them, lightly smush them top down, and the top is the rounder end. I'm going to get some stuff on them.
There it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, and then top down on the...
And then top down, yeah. So then they start upside down. Let's get some in there. Let's do a lot of everything's. And then this is fun. This can be, now we don't need the plate. We're just going to use the,
you want to put it in there?
This is how we do it in a shop. This is a small version of the shop method. We have, we've got our bucket and we go, shloomp, boom.
Nice.
It's really satisfying.
I get lots of stuff on there.
Now we're ready to bake. So, you come in here. So this is my baking stone that I had custom made for being the biggest stone I could fit into my oven. And we're just gonna load all these guys in. So here's the thing, they're wet. And if we just put our wet dough bagels and threw them on the stone, they would just like glue themselves to the stone. If we just kind of put them right side up and let them sit. And then we would never be able to get them off. So the bagel boards let us have, like actually produce bagels and get them to bake on the stone while being able to pull them off the stone again. So we're gonna let it bake a little bit. So I give it about 4 minutes. So what we want now is just that the bottoms are gonna kind of dry out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really baking so much as just drying. And then we flip them over and then it has its real bake.
You put them onto the stone.
Yeah, we're gonna bake directly on the stone. So the same way that like hearth bread kind of bakes directly on the stone.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same, you with a good bread like from Tartine, and that bottom crust is really thick and like crusty, and like the bottom is very, like the whole thing is crusty and awesome, but the bottom is very different from the top.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get that with the bagels the same way.
Right.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's what, there's, you know, it can kind of go
Yeah,
in a bunch of it.
cool.
All right, so I'm gonna, now, when we get to the real oven, so now it's dried, it's a little tacky still, but it's okay, it's not like soaking wet anymore. So if I was in a better oven, like I will be soon, we would just go flip, 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 but there's not enough room in here, so I kind of do this. And you can do this if you want, it's not that glamorous. Or I'm just kind of pulling them off, and these are nice and hot, so I've got the glove. And we just put them right side up. So do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, totally.
And this is the part where the home oven is really terrible because all the heat is flying out of the oven. And that'll be different in a proper bagel oven.
Should I close it?
Yep, close it. Now we'll give it like 15 minutes and see where it's at. And this is my peel.
It works.
It works. So you can see, so here's the beauty of the bottom crust. So this is from baking on the stone. And we get these beautiful blisters and just like this awesome color. And it's nice and hard. And it contrasts so well with the rest of the crust. It's so neat to have these two different things happening. No, I feel like it's part of the magic. There's there's a lot of texture happening in a bagel.
No, it is really nice, yeah, because if it was all soft like the top, it's like it wouldn't have that same kind of bite, like that same kind of texture. Mm-hmm. Like it is really nice to have like the two halves that are like very distinctly different. So you have the bite that like has this like nice bottom crust, and then you flipped over and this is like, you get a lot of the seeds, but it's like nice and soft and chewy.
Yeah.
A bagel is a delicious food.
H&H bagel was not a dark and crispy bagel. It was, the top was roughly like this. It was a little softer, and I called it like a leathery crust. So it wasn't, the top was not crispy. It had like a little bit of squish and give, but like with this really wonderful skin to it.
Mmm.
All right. So we've got this nice, it is hot. Woo, that's very hot. I'm gonna let that cool for a sec. Usually I wouldn't eat these quite this fresh out of the oven. It actually kind of needs to sit for a little bit, but that's all right. All right.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Let's eat. Get some hot over.
We could even cut these up into bits, whatever.
What's that?
All right, well.
Okay. Cheers.
Actually, I'm gonna do this. I'll do.
Yeah.
This is the second pepper I'll leave. Woo.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good bagel.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun. Simple, elegant process.